You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community and forum, and The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from fresh farm ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind.
Well, good morning and hello, kids. Welcome to Season 3 and Episode number 70 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show here on the Crier Media Network. Today, recording day is Monday, March 6, 2023, and it will be a mild late winter day here at the Beaver Lodge. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A, and with me, as always, is my dear friend, Mr. Grizzly. Of course, a big thank you goes to our podcast's founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and CanadianTarot.com. Today we have a Monday morning bite for you and a very special guest to help us know that which we need to know to not have the wool pulled over our eyes with regards to attempted election influence by the government of the People's Republic of China. We'll let you know a little bit more about who he is soon. If you were listening on Friday, you probably already know. But first, hello, Mr. Grizzly. How's your mental health today? And importantly today, how's your back?
Well, hey, Mr. Beaver, my mental health is currently on hold because I'm not awake.
Okay.
I woke up my usual time, 5 a.m., and I thought, I could use a few more minutes sleep. Boom. Out like a light. 6 a.m. alarm, secondary alarm goes off. I'm going to hit snooze. I need a few more minutes. I hit snooze. Goes off again after 10 minutes. I hit stop, and I think, okay, let's get up. I roll over and I look at the clock and I go, 6:30. What? I'm missing 20 minutes. So then I began to stumble about my apartment, make some coffee, and sit down at the computer to do this with you. So I'm not awake. I'm not awake at all. As for the back, it's still very owie. I haven't taken any meds yet. I will after we get off the air, so I can remain somewhat coherent this morning because, as you could tell by last night, I was a little loopy.
Yes, we tried to record something last night, and I think about 45 minutes in, it's like, do you want to stop?
It wasn't so much that I wanted to stop. It was just like, well, I can't read anything on the page right now because the room is spinning. So maybe that's a great idea.
All right. Good morning, Kit Jillian. Good morning, Kit Linda. Good morning, Kit Elaine. Good morning, Kit Saucy. Lovely to see you all here today. Mr. Grizzly, do you have anything to start us off?
couple of quick tidbits, yeah. I saw this the other day online, and I thought, well, that's funny. I'm going to save this for the show for a good start. And it's like, at Coley Tangerina, in every partnership, there's a person who stacks the dishwasher like a Scandinavian architect, and a person who stacks the dishwasher like a raccoon on meth. You're the raccoon on meth?
No, Scandinavian architect.
Okay.
The raccoon on meth.
Okay.
Same thing for packing a suitcase. He just basically takes all the clothes out and then he leaves them on the bed and says, "You're so much better at this than I am," and then leaves.
Yeah. It is what it is, right?
Apparently I'm able to fit more in somehow. I don't know. I don't know what my secret is, but because I've never worked in a department store, so it's not like I've learned professionally how to fold clothes. Well. All right. Let's see. What do we want to start with today while we're waiting for our guest to arrive?
Well, I did manage to get some more some stuff from our title sponsor.
Ooh.
Eleganza? Yeah, check this out.
Yes.
Let's see if I can get this if I can get this to download. I'm having problems with it right now, but I have their full catalog online right now.
Oh.
It is spectacular. Oh my goodness.
All right.
Some of this stuff is just so disturbing.
While you're looking for that, just a little tidbits on Toronto and City Hall. There's some speculation as to who may or may not be running. Jennifer McKelvey, who's the deputy mayor, and is a second-term councillor from the Scarborough area. By training, she's an environmental geoscientist, and she's not planning to replace the mayor, which is why she took the interim job. It's clear whether the strong mayor powers will devolve to her automatically. Apparently, the legislation is not written that way, that in case of an interim mayor, the powers devolve. So it's another thing that gives the impression that was probably Mayor John Tory that went to Doug Ford's office and said, "I need these powers. Will you please give them to me?" And then Doug Ford thought, well, you're on my side, so I have no problem. But now that he's gone, we have that Doug Ford clip going around about him saying that they're screwed if they get Toronto with those powers. Yeah, I guess you should have thought of that before you designed a law that was supposed to serve only you, I guess. I mean, tell me you created a law to serve only yourself without telling me. Right? That's what that comment kind of reveals. Many councillors are considering a bid, given that they do not have to step down from their current position in order to take a shot. I'm guessing that's normally the case, but given that it's a by-election or a special election, in this case, it would not be required. Stanley Cho, who was rumored as being a contender or potentially interested, has indicated that he will be passing on the opportunity. Brad Bradford might be the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario consensus choice. So whether or not there'll be more than one candidate running from that side of the spectrum or not, or whether or not they're just going to put all their eggs into one basket and hope that person wins, will be the case. Cressy says that he will not run, and everybody's wondering whether Michael Ford will step down provincially to give it a run. So that's the thinking at the moment, kids. And here we go. Ooh.
The latest styles from Eleganza mail catalog.
Things happen when you wear Eleganza.
Flocked houndstooth sets the scene.
Hey, groovy
the
daddy.
Bold belted walking suit.
You need to give me a slice of that.
Stripes and plaids with big legs.
Big legs. Oh, I love big legs.
Look at the cuffs on those on the upper right-hand corner. You could store a whole meal of granola in there. The toga coat suit.
Woohoo!
I mean, Eleganza really was reaching in the 70s. They went to the extreme, the Vegas gambler suit
by Plaid Stallions. Oh no, that's okay. That's the site that was on.
That's a website. Yeah. It's just, oh boy, man, you must have had to like everybody was on cocaine in the 70s. I understand why. You needed to be high to wear those things, and we're probably very high when you made those things or created those things. Like, good Lord, that's bad.
Oh man, jeez,
Yeah, they were a
wow.
mail order only catalog. They didn't actually have any stores, I'm told. Mail order only. Eleganza.
Eleganza.
And I thought they were from Detroit. They're not. They're from Boston.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which makes it even harder to understand because
Yes, it really does.
Boston's a lot more of a blue collar town. I mean, sure,
Exactly.
Detroit's a blue collar town, but there was like this whole 70s crazy vibe going on, whereas Boston was more, yeah, forget about it. I'm from Boston. I'll kick your ass, you know?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Looking stateside, a couple of things have happened. The mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, who is the first black and openly gay mayor of Toronto, first black female. Sorry,
Chicago.
first black, yeah,
Chicago.
of Chicago, did not get through her primary.
Oh, really?
Really? Yep. So she is not going to be a candidate. They said one term was enough.
Hmm.
Yeah, kind of interesting. She was butting heads. So, I mean, it's kind of
That's
understandable.
one way to put it, yeah.
Yeah. But still, you know, it was such a historic moment when she had won. So it was kind of a surprising the turn in such a short amount of time.
Well, one of the things that she was fighting against, so this is related to taxation and billionaires.
mhm.
So Soldier Field in Chicago, which was rebuilt, I don't know, 20 some years ago, and everybody always hated it. Soldier Field is where the Chicago Bears play. Everybody hated the rebuild, and they reduced the seating capacity, and nobody loved it. So Chicago, the Bears, decided they're going to build a new stadium outside of the city because the city, under her stewardship, refused to chip in any money. And I'm
Mhm.
like, well, and why should the city pay for? I mean, like in Minnesota, Minneapolis, the new stadium that was built there, most of it was funded by the citizens.
Right.
Whereas, like, why, you know, the owners of the team only chipped in 100 billion or 100 million for a multi-billion-dollar stadium. So it's just bizarre. Anyway, I think a large part of it was Chicago Bears fans just rallied against her, but I could be wrong. Anyway.
Mhm. And in talking about candidates declaring for races, in the race for the Republican primary nomination, none other than Nikki Haley has announced her candidacy for the Republican nomination in Charleston, South Carolina. So we'll have that more on that at another time because our guest has arrived. But other people that have been going around because they had that big CPAC thing not too long ago, and it seems that regular Republicans are have not been showing up.
Mm.
And then the Trumpers have been going to CPAC, so it seems that too has been taken over. But in the mix of the other candidates' names you might be hearing are Tim Scott. He's the one black Republican senator who tried to make a deal to have a crime fighting deal, but it went nowhere because, of course, his party wasn't behind him. Mike Pompeo, Mike Pence, of course, a guy named Asa Hutchinson, Chris Sununu from New Hampshire, I believe he was.
I just like his surname.
Asa Hutchinson, I believe, was from Arizona. Larry Hogan, who used to be the governor of Maryland, I believe, and of course, DeSantis. Sorry. It just slips out.
Accurate. It's accurate.
It slips out. I'm not exactly sure how that happens. Just little Freudian slip.
It happens. It happens.
But Kits, our guest is here. Oh, I like that. Kit James blackballed. When I tune into the Eager Beaver, I do so without pants or a shirt or underoos or shame. That's very good because pride and shame are just useless emotions as well as guilt. So there you go, kids. The secret to life. No pride, no shame, no guilt. You'll be happy.
Just don't say that in June.
Really?
You'll be drummed out of the organization.
What do you mean? No pride in June. No pride in June. Who needs that? No pride. Somebody's going to strategically take that clip out, right?
Oh, of
And so,
course,
yeah,
of
Eager Beaver's
course.
against pride.
Yeah, of course. Shall we bring in our esteemed colleague and special guest, a gentleman who knows way more about this than I ever will? This is Mr. Mubin Shaikh. Shaikh,
Yes,
did I say your surname correctly, Shaikh?
Mubin.
Shake, 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 shake.
Okay,
Shake your
see?
Mubin. No?
I like it.
I like it, baby. Good day, sir. How are you?
Good, good. Except for the visual that James DeFore gave us.
Yeah.
James, buddy, please don't.
I don't know. I think James would look kind of cute just in underoos.
No, he says he's not wearing
Save that for
underoos, though.
June.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
without underoos. Sorry. No. Yes. Sorry, yes.
Save it for June, yeah.
Save it for June. Kids, for those who don't know, I think you might have to have been living under a rock, but our guest is a specialist and consultant instructor to police, intelligence, and special operations forces on a range of topics. He is currently a professor, yes, because we like people with knowledge over here, in the
Yes.
School of Public Safety at Seneca College, and a counter-extremism specialist for the renowned NGO Parents for Peace, where he conducts direct interventions with radicalized and extremist individuals. Welcome to the Beaver Lodge, Mubin Shaikh.
Right on. Thank you for having me.
All right. I loved your tweet. Well, we've been chatting now and then off and on, but your tweet that came up about how to manufacture a crisis. I love that stuff because on the show we tried to do a bit of the political and media literacy bit, so that people know how their country is supposed to work. So when people turn around and say, for example, as they're insinuating here, that he had specific knowledge that, they singled out Han Dong and this was going on, and elections have been overturned in certain writings. Okay, no, not now. And we're not saying the elections have been overturned, but we need to look in, but only for 2 years. And so, this definitely come from thesis and all that kind of stuff. So this is a lot of stuff that we don't necessarily get to hear about because we're talking about spycraft, right? And we're talking about national intelligence. So by definition, inherently, there are things that will never come to light that we will never know. So it makes it easier for those who want to fill in the blanks in the narrative with whatever they want or need to be true to spin it however they want to do so, because nobody can come out and actually show you the proof that it's not true because it's a secret. So I was wondering if you could maybe start off and just tell the kids, based on your understanding of the situation, what is being alleged and how. Well, let's start with that. What's being alleged?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me. I apologize the last time I totally flunked out and missed the appointment. So I was sure to be up and have my coffee, and so I'm good to go. It's pretty bad
every now and then, so don't worry.
Well, in the morning it's pretty bad. If I don't have a coffee, it's just I'm just like a zombie in the morning. So
Même chose pour moi.
So yeah, so the latest thing is Chinese interference by the Communist Party of China. Don't like to use Chinese, obviously. I like to use CCP, Communist Party of China. That the Communist Party of China has been basically grooming certain candidates, and as a result, some have claimed that there has been interference in the Canadian election, and we need a public inquiry to get to the bottom of this.
Mm-hmm.
And in the course of that, there was a leak of some kind of CSIS document or CSIS report that allegedly the Liberal Party was told about a candidate, at least one candidate, that he was a target of not just CSIS investigations, or he was a target of a CSIS investigation because of his proximity to Chinese government officials. That helped him basically come to power and be in power. So that's the general allegation. It was very strange because in the so-called reporting, it said that CSIS told the Liberal Party to basically rescind the nomination of the candidate, which was like everybody who was in CSIS and is public now, they're all like, excuse me. CSIS doesn't do that. See, they're not allowed to do that, Yeah, they would have been told off real quickly if they tried to do that. So that's the general allegation. It's kind of creeping towards election interference, quote unquote. It's being made out to be, akin to the U.S. As soon as we hear election interference, that's the first place that we think of and we go to. And words have consequences. When the media puts out reporting like this, how do you prove it, right? It's an unverified leak or information from an unverified leak, which how are you going to prove or even disprove it? So just the allegation alone, the insinuation alone, they stick legs on it and off it goes for a run.
Yeah. Okay. Now, based on some of the allegations that are being made, a lot of the talk is as if this leak definitely came from within thesis and it's people in the know, and it's which would be, I mean, the fact that there's a leak, number one, is a pretty big story, because in this type of thing, if you say the names of who is detected, there are relationships that may have been established that suddenly get broken off. I mean, if somebody's name gets in the public, you stop influencing, right? You don't keep on showing up on their door, or you try to find another way around. So you're blowing things up. I personally am not convinced that the leak came from thesis, and my sense of the reporting seems to want us to make us believe that it's someone with thesis that was so disgruntled, so pissed off with the government that they had to blow the whistle. I'm saying that because there exists other paths for that information, because that information was not solely in the hands of thesis. We have the NSICOP committee, for example, where there are MPs from every party. Loose lips?
Well,
who knows, right? So based on your knowledge and based on your expertise, is it absolutely for sure that this leak would have come within thesis, or is that in doubt? Should we believe that narrative?
Yeah, it's definitely in doubt. I don't know what current thesis employee would risk being prosecuted potentially, just to quote unquote leak this information. And it's not like it's information that's pressing or of any kind of major import, really. I mean, I'll save you millions of dollars in public inquiry money and tell you that the Communist Party of China, the Putin government, Iran and North Korea, these are all countries that engage in one form or another of subversion, disinformation, you name it, influencing even politicians. They all do it. I mean, we live in a very permissive environment. We're in Canada. It's it's a very open, free society. People can do that, right? I mean, foreign governments can influence people, and it happens all the time. And it's not just confined to the Communist Party of China, and it's certainly not something that's only the liberals are doing. If one wants to make the argument, it's that Canada as a whole has been kind of slacking and kind of lazy or slow or otherwise weak in the way in which we've been stepping into some of this influence. It seems that we kind of let it happen, and there's seemingly not much we can do about it. Because again, in the world like intelligence and police, it's two different worlds. Police lay charges. So, for example, even in the case of spies that have been, caught, like for example, the researchers in the lab, a lot of times we were not going to lay charges. We just kind of deport them back to their country, and this is like almost an arrangement, an agreement that countries have with each other. When their spies get caught, they just send them back. They don't charge anybody. Don't throw anybody into prison for 25 years for whatever. They just kind of leave it alone, and that I think is becoming the problem.
I guess that kind of makes it interesting. For example, like in the case of Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, then in that case when, oh, yes, we are detaining them for spying rather than sending them back home, if that seems to be the standard operating.
And this is the thing also, is like countries like China and others who are big enough that they can do what they want, right? They, as we saw what the Communist Party of China did, they effectively took 2 Canadians hostage. And it was in response to the Huawei executive who Canada had picked up, in response to a U.S. request. So the Chinese government basically retaliated against Canadians by grabbing 2 of our own. So this also kind of changes the dynamic, because if we were to act against, some interest, some Chinese influence agent, what would the response be by the Chinese against Canadians who are in China?
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of chess pieces at play there, right?
Yeah. So if it's not likely, if it would be more likely that the source would be within CSIS if it was something critical. So if there was like something bad about to happen, government was ignoring it, and somebody thought, the public really needs to know. But this wasn't that case. What other potential avenues through which could that information have gotten to the media and those two, the journalists in question?
Yeah, one has to just track it back to that chain, if you will. I mean, the intelligence starts with CSIS. It's then shared to this committee of parliamentarians. That's the NSI-COP there, National Security Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians. And, that's where the partisan link comes, I think. And you know what, to be honest, I think, I think it is a politically motivated leak. I think, if anything, even if we assume that it was a CSIS person, and that's my second guess. I mean, I wouldn't imagine a CSIS officer or analyst or somebody would be that foolish to risk their career just for this. This is not even that big of a deal, really. This is something that China, Communist Party of China influence in Canada is something that's been going on for decades.
Right.
It's certainly not something that just happened under Trudeau. And that's what bothers me, is that I'm all about the right information. I really don't care about the politics.
Right.
Exactly.
I hold, all of them in some kind of disdain. But I don't think anyone would be that foolish to do that. And so, if anything, I think it's going to come from one of the partisan, partisan sides, meaning a parliamentarian or even a staffer, right? Doesn't necessarily have to be at that high of a level. I mean, there are a number of people who could have got their hands on that information and then quote unquote leaked it. But it's not something that was of such a pressing nature that would warrant a quote unquote a leak. So there are a number of hands through which that information probably passed, and I hope that CSIS is able to find out where it broke down and where that leak came from. But I don't know. I mean, what if CSIS discovers that it was in fact a partisan leak from a member of parliament? Let's say that's supposed to be on this committee of parliament. That'd be really, really bad.
Yeah,
You just think about the reputational damage that it gives us, right? That, wait a second, things are, first of all, just things are being leaked by CSIS. That in and of itself is scandalous.
Yeah.
Scandalous. Right. And if it's a full-fledged, member of parliament or something like that, then it will be seen as highly embarrassing to the politicians, and so it might just be squashed.
Well, and that's, if that's the case, that's an example of placing country over party over country in that case, and that is really dangerous to democracy, because that leads to full-fledged fascism and probably dictatorial politicians. So, yeah. I mean, we're like, there is a giant rabbit hole here we could go down if we had the time, but I think it would take us all day, quite frankly. But the possible ramifications are really disturbing.
That means someone, if it came through that case, it means that one of the 338 was not a member of His Majesty's loyal opposition.
Right.
I find also, especially one of the big problems with partisanship is, especially like you mentioned, party over country. What ends up happening is that when your domestic political other becomes your enemy, then the actual adversary, maybe enemy is a tough word, then the actual adversary becomes an ally, because you're against the government of the day. Right. And so, and we see this like in the US. The US is just paralyzed by hyperpartisanship, just paralyzed. I don't know
Yeah.
how they get half the stuff done. I mean,
It's miraculous they get anything done, and
it's
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 Well,
really bad.
they
well,
had like
and it
throughout
hurts
my
everybody. It
yeah.
hurts every single member of society.
Yeah.
Well, throughout my
Well,
entire life, I kept on hearing gridlock is good. Says who?
Yeah. No, it's not.
well, look at and look at what's happened in the U.S. Right? Like they are so against Biden, and Biden is pro-Ukraine. Well, then clearly we have to be pro-Russia, right? I
Yeah,
mean, it's
Reagan is spinning in his
yeah,
grave.
absolutely. And it's there's like this saying, right? Like when the U.S. when the U.S. sneezes, Canada catches a cold.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
I mean, we saw this with January 6th. A lot of these so-called MAGA Canadians want to be MAGA Americans for some reason. I mean, they just look at the rabbit hole they went down. They just started imitating and mirroring the MAGA people, MAGA community, or whatever they call themselves.
Yeah.
I'll be
So
happy to
we're
help
seeing,
them pack.
yeah, we're seeing a similar thing here. We absolutely are. I mean, that the fact that what's her face, Anderson, of the AFD is able to come in, and how they even have links with the Conservative Party, that members of Parliament can be meeting and dining, and there being this whole
Right.
that is also influence
Oh,
on
yeah.
Yes.
Canadian politicians.
Yeah.
All right. The AFD is a well-known, openly pro-Putin party. Why is she here while Canada is doing its support of the Ukraine people and the Ukraine cause? Why is she here talking to these politicians and trying to influence them? So if we're really serious about influencing our politicians by foreign entities, I mean, there's an example for us to look at right there. So I'm all about it. If they want to have a public inquiry and whatever else to find out who's been doing it and to whom, I think we should do that across the board. But of course, unfortunately, in our environment, it's all about rumor mongering, and especially when it comes to politics and elections. You could see this, and this kind of triggered my comment about the media is basically misdirecting us, basically just leading us to look at this shiny object. The Emergencies Act inquiry report came out, and it proved that yes, Trudeau was in the right, and yes, these people had broken the law. People didn't want to hear that. And I think the media is a rumor monger. All right, that's what they feed off of. That's what they thrive off. All right, they have to push these controversies, and if there isn't a controversy, they'll just invent one, right? And in the case of like the Ottawa and associated activities, it was great for them. It was great. Pictures, interviews. I mean, everybody was out there. It was great. They loved it. And I think in one way they disliked Trudeau because he invoked the act and he put an end to that theater, and so right after the Emergencies Act inquiry report, right after this far right pro-Putin agent of influence visits, right away both those stories are dead and buried, and now it's like look, Chinese interference, look.
Yeah, distraction.
I don't buy it.
Look over here to the right, over here, look over here.
I don't
look
buy
over
it
here.
for 1 second.
Don't look at that. No, I completely agree, and we need to remember who is influencing the media. Let's go back to Chatham Asset Management, the American right-wing hedge fund closely tied to the GOP, which owns 66 or 60%? 66% of Post Media, which has newspapers right across this country.
Which now owns the Sun Chain.
The Sun Chain and the Ottawa Citizen. So at one point in time, one company was not allowed to own 2 daily newspapers in a single city. Well, Harper threw the rules out with that. He's the one who changed those rules. At one point in time, one media company was not allowed to own 2 cable companies. The city of Ottawa used to have 2 cable companies, Ottawa Cable and Skyline, and it was divided up the middle of the city on Bank Street, which is the center of the town, right? So the east side of Bank had Skyline, the west side had Ottawa. Rogers came in, bought the whole thing. Wait a minute. Now that happened under Chrétien. So all these rules that were once in place to keep a level playing field have been tossed out over the last 30 years by successive governments. And again, everybody says, oh, you're just a left-wing liberal NDP. I'm like, no, I just pointed the finger of blame at Chrétien for something. I point the finger of blame where the finger of blame needs to be pointed.
Yep.
I'm always going to be like that.
Yep.
And when you look at the influence being peddled by this extreme right wing hedge fund ownership, Chatham Asset Management, they are really playing into it. They're completely ignoring the fact that we had basically, for want of a better term, a Nazi in our midst, meeting with members of parliament. And I say for want of a better term because it's illegal to be a Nazi in Germany, and she would have been arrested if she was actually a out and out Nazi.
Mm-hmm.
But when you espouse all the aspects of Nazism, you know, walks like a duck and talks like a duck.
It's shocking to me that we're even. It's really still surreal, especially in the U.S. when this whole thing was going on. It's like you would think to yourself, like, neo-Nazis, like you're still seeing the swastika flag, like
Yeah.
You know, it's like you cannot be an American and a Nazi. Like
No,
there was a
they fly in the
war over
face.
this. The whole world was involved. You know, like, but then when you look at US history and you see that in the early 1900s, right before World War II, you had thousands of Americans pack into Madison Square Gardens,
Mhm.
right?
We've
I mean,
seen the
openly,
photos.
openly celebrating it. So the mindset, the ideology has remained. Okay, it has not gone away. And so when we see these folks coming out with the views that they hold, and when we say that they're neo-Nazis, or whether you want to call them neo-Nazi adjacent, whatever term you want to give them, you know, it's the same stink of poop that comes from them.
Yep.
It's the same end result. So even, you know, I mean, and again, back to the whole influence thing. I mean, it's so well known that Putin supports these far right parties. The AfD in Germany is a very well known. It's like this is so well known publicly, right? AfD is a big one in France, of course. Marine Le Pen's party there, right? I mean, overtly they support these groups. The Base, this neo-Nazi group called the Base, that's been very active in the U.S. There was a bunch of people that have been arrested. Where is that run out of? That's run out of Moscow, right? It's run by an American actually who fled to Moscow. So you know, the Russian propaganda machine is very, very sophisticated, probably more sophisticated than the Chinese one, I think, because the Russians are all about playing up these culture wars that's you know, that are ongoing in the West. And so just to see all this stuff coming up in front of our face, and then it's like we're being gaslit in many cases, right? It's like, well, there's always some excuse that's being made or something, you know, at least. And I'll you know what, I will give credit to Pierre Polivier. Actually, I will do it. He did come out and say heinous views, you know, it was an unequivocal condemnation, and I get that. And there's a whole political thing. I mean, he didn't make a public statement. He didn't make there was nothing on his tweet. There was a statement that was released, you know, through a friendly contact. Okay, I get that. I mean, probably they're seeing that it's bad for the brand. Let's not talk about it. Let's just let it go away. And that's exactly what's happened, right? Especially with this whole China interference, influence elections. Suddenly, the Anderson visit is out of the media. Emergencies Act report is out of the media.
Stag and Doe's out of the media.
Yep. So.
Yeah, a little too convenient. So that's, I guess, when you say that this type of interference has been going on for decades. That's why you say that you have it in, well, not have it in, but you have a beef with all parties over time, because it's being spun like it's brand new, right?
Exactly.
It only happened in 2019 and 2021, and you know, Trudeau knew, and when did he knew, and he did nothing about it. So, I mean, you're saying that, as we thought as well on the show, I mean, this has been going on for a long time, and we were joking, so, gee, if you're worried about China, wait until you hear about Iran. I mean, so all this is, you're confirming this for us. What they're saying is that nothing has been done. Now, I know for a fact the NSIRA, which is the overall body providing some oversight over our national security apparatus, which didn't exist before, and the NSICOP were both started during the terms of this prime minister. I also know that there are certain things that may be done to respond to attempts to election interference that we can't say what it is that we're doing, because we might have those systems in place right now and we would be blowing them up. So we can't be showing everything that we're doing. Are you aware of other things that are public that we have been doing over the past X number of years to try and fight this type of interference or attempts at influence?
Yeah, there are a number of attempts that I think this government is trying to do, and you raised a good point about it was under Trudeau that that the Committee of Parliamentarians and the National Security and Intelligence Review Agency were started. It's funny because I was actually involved in discussions with then MP Derek Lee. He literally wrote the handbook on parliamentary procedure for the House of Commons. I think he was also involved in the first review of thesis of the CSE. I think there was only one review done of the CSE. That's basically our NSA.
Okay.
I've worked with them.
Yeah, and he I remember having these discussions about having this sort of oversight thing, and for the longest time, it was the Conservatives that were just kiboshing the whole thing. There was supposed to be, there was a legislation that was tabled, but then the elections were over, the government lost, and then that was just thrown to the side. So it's good that we have this review agency and a committee of parliamentarians. That's very important. This was something that Canada was lacking. Every other Five Eyes country has it, and we didn't, but now we do. So now because of that being created, obviously there are cases that have gone to them, and they will sit there and parse things out to the very finite level. But in terms of other activities that have been taken, look, what can you do with certain activities? If let's say the Communist Party of China decides, they want to influence a particular election, they will just go and vote for the other person, right? They can tell their people, listen, and everybody does that. That's what everybody literally does, whether you're Communist Party of China or you're whatever ex-mainstream political party, you just vote for the other guy, right? Or the other person. So that's not illegal, right? It's technically not illegal. Well, it technically is illegal to engage in foreign influence, but how are you going to police that? You would need to be, watching so many people, Canadians who are willing agents of influence for the Communist Party of China. If they start doing these things, well, I'm a Canadian engaged in my rights to participate in the electoral process.
Mhm.
How is CSIS even going to start to get a warrant to investigate people just on the basis of that? That's not enough. And that's where most of it happens. So how are they even going to investigate that? And we have this idea, like people, it's almost like this cartoonish Hollywoodized version of, we think like the intelligence services are everywhere, right? They're not. They're
Right.
not. And we have a very small number of people. Like we give almost like godlike powers to the intelligence agencies, I think sometimes. And when you realize like how few people we have, it's a miracle many times that they even catch a lot of plots and this and that. So to expect them to investigate at that level, it's a non-starter. And then if you think about charging people, like actually laying criminal charges against people, they generally don't do this in intelligence-led cases or like cases that begin with CSIS. If there's criminal activity that's about to happen or has just happened, okay, that goes over to the RCMP, and the RCMP will do their criminal investigation.
Right.
But sometimes it's just so, the intelligence agencies, they would rather just watch and watch and watch. It's almost like very, they're like voyeurs in one sense. They don't
observe and report, and report, right?
Exactly. So if they know that, there are these people that are under influence of the Communist Party of China, they're not going to lay charges. And I mean, the RCMP probably aren't going to lay charges either because, well, it could have diplomatic ramifications and other ramifications that they just don't want to deal with it. So there are some, I think, subtle things that hamstring agencies to actually do something. We as society, we want to see something is being done. So like at best, when we read in the paper, these scientists got kicked out, basically deported out of Canada. Well, we know something happened. We know the government did something. We know that they just deported them. But behind the scenes and underneath, there's a lot that's gone on, right? And in one sense, once you arrest somebody or once you kind of identify them, and like you said in the beginning there, that's it. Like you've burned your ability to remain
Right.
covert, and you've
Right.
exposed, the fact that you're onto them, and so the real influencers will just move on to someone else and start that process all over again.
Right. Right. I don't know how much more time we have.
A few more minutes.
A few more minutes. Okay. Oh my God, I have so many questions. Okay, I want to briefly, and then on this one, we're warned that intelligence is not facts, and therefore the bits of information that are allegedly being leaked by CSIS, but probably not, as we've established here. How much confidence? Because the conservatives are taking these facts and taking these details, I should say, and running with them as if they are proven, verified facts. This is the case. This is the story. This did happen. The prime minister did know. I mean, we don't, as far as I'm concerned, we don't even know if when CSIS told him, said, you've got this guy named Han Dong, or, you have some candidates in the GTA that you should be looking at, right? Whether or not they would actually identify him by name. We don't even know if the briefing is done that precisely. And again, they can't tell us. So, how much what are your thoughts on that about like intelligence and not being facts, and how much confidence the average Canadian, when you have conservative, says they did this, it's written right here in this report?
Yeah. This is the problem with, because intelligence is really just information plus value, right? Some kind of value that's been associated to it. And that value, especially if it's like covertly collected, or that's very easily qualified as intelligence, and whether it's secret or can be disclosed and to whom, and they have these internal classifications and processes to determine that. But I think what you said at the beginning, like in terms of the faith that Canadians will have in their institutions, I think is impacted. If you think about, so like this thing, like a report is leaked or some information that came from somewhere and it's leaked, and it's like, we already know that parts of it have been contradicted. All right. So the CSIS director himself, other, former CSIS people who are public now, who have been commenting publicly, all are unanimous that there's no way that any CSIS person is going to tell a political party, get rid of this candidate, rescind their nomination or whatever. That would just not happen. So where does that information even come from? So I think that's at the core of this supposed claim that Trudeau or the Liberal Party was told this, and they still went ahead and continued to run with that candidate. That's the main argument.
Yeah.
But CSIS themselves are saying, well, we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't tell a political party, get rid of your candidate. So a core aspect of that claim, which we're supposed to believe is fact, has fallen apart, has been contradicted. So a massive question mark has come over that so-called report. So now the onus is going to be on whoever did the reporting to show, in fact, that there is actually some credence to this claim, because a major part of it has just been debunked. So what are they doing? They're just doubling down on it, right?
Of course.
Media organizations.
The damage is done.
Yeah,
the damage is done.
They know the damage they're doing, and they do it deliberately. And then once they're forced to backtrack, the damage is done. So what? Oops.
Yeah. Because the claim seems weird to me, because he was an MPP for 4 years before, and I was an MP. He's 2 years completed. Somewhere within the 6 years, if he was an asset, it would have popped up at some point in the last 6 years. I mean, he would have attempted something, wouldn't he?
Well, even if he did, and he was, let's say he was under investigation, and I can guarantee you that there are politicians that are compromised and that are working for foreign interests. They absolutely exist in Western society, and in the free and open democratic societies in which we live. You will find this, anywhere. So without a doubt, they're there, but CISA is not going to say anything. They're just going to keep observing. They're going to see how big the network is. If you watch somebody for 1 year, who knows, maybe the foreign services have told them lay low for a year. Let's say they got caught right away, okay, within the first week of them being recruited, and then the foreign state says, okay, just lay low for a year. Well, then now CSIS knows that this person is going to lay low for a year, so they're going to watch them for a year, and then let's see what happens in the next year. And in that next year, if they see that network growing, well, then why would they bring an end to that at the end of that second year? Why not let it keep going year 3, year 4, year 5? It's not like they're blowing stuff up, so there's no real need to stop this person right away. You can let them keep doing what they're doing. They'll only have a limited impact and limited influence, right, over the larger process. It's not like, what we're having, like what happened in the US, where it's like a straight up lie, that the election was stolen and this and that. And true, there are some people on the conservative side who are taking this and saying, oh, our elections have been compromised. They just throw these salacious accusations. They're the ones undermining confidence in the Canadian process.
Okay. I have 2 last questions for you, one lighter, one more serious. The Rouleau report came out, and we've both noticed that certain people have just skated right on past, and one of them is the Conservative Party of Canada, because they had a stated strategy of allowing this to go on to encourage it and hoping that the Prime Minister would wear it. And then we've had stuff like such as Michael Cooper being on the Hill when there were Nazi flags going along, and our current leader of the opposition basically acting like Skippy the Dishes to people who were in cabs. So Mr. Justice Rouleau has basically come to the conclusion that this was indeed an illegal occupation, that this was a movement that was violent enough to have required the first ever invocation of the Emergencies Act in the Canadian history. And the Conservatives were very supportive of that movement. And as far as I'm concerned, essentially provided aid and comfort to it. So you've got that going on. Then you've got Anderson coming in for Nazi brunch and a tour, and everybody's doing that. And now you've got a potential leak that might have come from conservative circles, and you also have Poliver spouting the rhetoric at the moment that the move to decriminalize small amounts of personal drugs in British Columbia and maybe provide some safe supply is the same thing as the government literally flooding the streets with poison. So basically, the Canadian government is trying to kill basically our addicts. Should we, based on everything that you know about intelligence and spycraft and covert operations, should Canadians be worried about the Conservative Party of Canada at the moment?
Yeah, that's a loaded question for me, but no. Look, I do see. So, in the name of partisanship, we see these sorts of things, which could even raise to the level of subversion. That's how I saw the January 6th, the Convoy thing. See how I'm conflating two things. This is what I saw, right? I mean, and we all saw it. It was clearly endorsed, facilitated, accepted, supported by one particular party. They were let off the hook. You didn't see any media articles taking them to
Nobody
task.
was asked to testify.
Nothing. And this kind of goes back to, and I think what a lot of us know, and you were saying about Post Media, for example, that controls, over, such a large number of publications, all with different names, all purported to be different papers, right? Very sneaky how they do that, right? So that's one thing that we can see already, that these media companies are overtly supportive of one particular party over another. Look, you can be partisan. I mean, welcome to Canada. You can do it as you like, but don't promote yourself or purport to be a objective media organization, and you're overtly and very clearly in support of one particular party over the other. National Post, for example, one of the worst papers, overtly supporting the convoy, carrying water for them, providing the ideological support or backup in the papers, in media. Everybody played it down, right? Everybody played down the Conservative Party's role in the occupation. how they were supporting them. There are so many things which warrant discussion, but just like that, discussion of the Emergencies Act report is over and it's
Swept
gone.
under the
And
rug.
let's
Yeah.
not talk about it anymore. So they've been given a free ride, and it's just let's move on to the next scandal. And then that's the thing. The media, unfortunately, they're scandalmongers, right? They're just rumor mongers, scandalmongers, and they're going to keep this up. They're going to keep this up until the elections. And what they'll do is they'll just, in the words of Steve Bannon, flood the zone with shit.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's what they'll do. And they just throw this and that and this and that. And by the time, in 6 months' time or in 1 year's time, they'll be able to say, well, the liberals did this and they did that and they did this, and they'll be able to list off these supposed scandals, for which you should, of course, vote for the other guy. So in the name of partisanship, excuse me, in the name of partisanship, I think a lot of these shenanigans get done. And it's weird because on one hand I have to kind of stand back and let the partisanship happen because that's a part of our process. And that's just the way things are going to be. But it's just when it gets to a point where it's just so in your face, such a bold-faced lie, and like you're making fools of us, or you're trying to make fools of us. The media is trying to make fools of us by expecting us to be so naive that we're just going to turn on a dime at this new shiny object that they've offered up for us.
Well, this is why we refuse to let this luncheon go.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We've had Poliver denounced it via Brian Lilly. He's not had a tweet about it. He's not publicly spoken about it. It's never been on YouTube. He's been confronted in a press conference and immediately ran out of the room. So until he hits this one head on, I'm going to hold him in contempt, quite frankly, because, well, I mean, it's no secret that I cannot stand the man, and I think he's a terrible human being. And my thoughts on this are my thoughts, and I'm certainly allowed to have them, but we do need to hold his feet to the fire about this. An extreme right-wing, somebody who's against immigration, who is anti-Islam, basically, if you don't look like me, effectively, if you don't look like me, you're not welcome in her party. So guess what? We can't have that because Canada is a multicultural community. It's going to remain one for the rest of our lives. And in 150 years from now, there's going to be barely anybody looking like me, which I'm completely fine with. Because if we all look a little bit more alike, maybe we'll stop hating each other as much. But
you would think.
One would think. I don't know if that's necessarily the truth, right? But
I wanted to just another thing about the convoy, because the convoy came first, right? And then we had this MEP, right, member of European Parliament. Nobody look at the free ride that there was just so much that went on that deserved discussion and parsing out into details. The Russian support,
crazy.
Russian influence operations during the convoy. Barely mentioned, wasn't even covered in the Emergencies Act report and inquiry. Didn't even look at it. Even I think CSIS was on the record as saying, we didn't see any foreign state activity, blah, blah, blah. But again, they're looking at it from a very narrow lens. We saw certainly a lot of, foreign influence and foreign activity, state-based activity, Russia in particular, right? When the convoy was happening, Russia, RT was one of the most covered the convoy more than any other media organization.
Yes.
You had Canadians who were falling over themselves to try to get a spot on Russia on RT News. But nobody's talking about that, right? Like that's overt. At least in the Chinese case, it's subtle. It's not overt, right? But yet that's the one we're supposed to be more afraid of, worried about, scared of, and so on. And we have to do something about it. So, if we could have started to do something about it, decades ago when the Communist Party of China was doing this, and they will continue to do this. It's going to be the same tomorrow that it was today, right? And look, there is something to be said. Again, I don't want to completely downplay it as just a partisan venture. Something should be done. I think the public needs to know, okay, well, this is what's happening. This is how it's done. This is what we can do. This is what you, the citizen, can do to be aware of these things. If we had a conversation like that to inform everyone, that would be very, very helpful.
Yeah,
But
I would be in favor of
unfortunately,
public inquiry for that purpose.
unfortunately, the partisanship is just, it's just paralyzing, you know. And it's like when you're trying to get work done, you know, it's like your partner is complaining about they're not comfortable in the chair, the light is too bright, it's too cold, it's not hot. It's, you know, it's like you're complaining about
Goldilocks.
things. You're just complaining about things, and the real problem continues.
Okay.
Well, we need to address, I don't know if you're aware, I'm sure you probably are, members of the freedom movement who have started asking for Vladimir Putin's help in Canada.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
They started
I saw that
flying
video.
Russian flags.
Idiots.
Like, what? We're in bizarro world right now.
Well, that's I think that was the point I said about once you become so partisan, your national adversary, your strategic adversaries become your tactical allies. And that's when you know you've gone too far, right? When you're so against the Canadian party. I'll be honest, it doesn't matter to me whether it's conservative, liberal, NDP. There might be there will be some policy differences, but all in all, Canada is going to be the same. It really doesn't change that much. So at the end of the day, maybe I'm making the argument that they're all the same. They're technically not. I mean, there are some significant, differences, of course, and I'm not trying to completely downplay it. I mean, there are some significant policy changes that absolutely can have impacts on people's lives, as we saw with the whole COVID response and so on. But you know, your general basic freedoms are still going to be there. I mean, it's still going to be a democracy, and we're still going to have all these, you know, conversations and discussions and whatnot. But you know, to think that Russia is somehow going to be is working for your interests, or the Communist Party of China, or anybody, just because you're against your domestic political other, you really need to. You're radicalized at this point. That's really the best word to use.
Yeah.
You're radicalized at this point. You will turn a blind eye to the worst of things. So it's like, oh, she's a neo-Nazi adjacent, let's call her that. Oh, well, yeah, but she's trashing Trudeau, so I like her. It's good, right?
And that's exactly what it is. And you saw the blowback on Skippy from the announcement made through Brian Lilly. So not an official announcement, but the blowback on Skippy for that one was, "Oh, Poliver, you've abandoned us. You've crossed us." I'm like, what?
Well, same thing when he made
the
the speech at the rally at Ukraine. Then all those videos came up. So you're just like the rest of them.
Yeah,
right.
You can see even like just online, the online Twitter troll activity of like, I mean, people don't realize, again, like the knowledge of how these influence operations happen is the biggest thing. I think a lot of the public just is not aware of how these things happen, right? And just Twitter trolls, for example, you know, the Internet Research Agency, like the Russians have basically like this call center like setup, you know, several floors in an office like building where these people, they manage multiple accounts online, and all day that's what they do. Their shifts match Eastern time zones or different time zones in the West, and they'll be churning out all this propaganda or disinformation, whatever, creating doubt, sowing chaos. And most of us are none the wiser. Like in the US, for example, when the elections were happening, the Russians were very, very active during that time. And they're very clever. They basically create two opposing sides, and they make each of those sides fight each other. And so they'll go online and they'll be like, you know, Proud Boys, hoorah, you know, .com.
They're completely agnostic.
Yeah, and then it'll be like ShariaForAmerica.com. And they'll fake like, and this is all well known, like they made these fake Muslim pages, and they're basically agitating against white Christian Americans, saying that, oh, blah, 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 these jihadists are coming. And then the other side, they would create like fake Black Lives Matter pages and fake white nationalist pages, because they just want all this chaos. And most people, they're not even aware. These Russian groups, they would set up competing rallies.
Yep.
They would have two fake pages, and both of them would have rallies, and they would make people show up so that they could protest against each other.
Yep.
Right. So
what was the line from The Dark Knight? Some men just want to watch the world burn.
That's right. That's right.
Yep. And some people want to make people dance and call the tune.
So if we're really serious about, how China does this influence, how Russia, how Iran is doing all kinds of hacking, how North Korea is doing all kinds of hacking, I think it was Metrolinx was hit by a cyber thing. They blamed, I think it was North Korea, but there's some questions on attribution, because in the cyber world and in the intelligence world, Iran will do it, but will do it in such a way that it'll blame North Korea.
Right.
It's like you don't even know who's doing it. So I mean, it's a mess. If we're really serious about trying to make sense of that mess, then we can do that, but it's got to be removed of its partisan blinders. Otherwise, we're gonna be just as dumb today as we were yesterday, and nobody benefits from it in the end.
Right.
No.
Right.
Everybody loses in the end.
That's the last point. This is the whole point with foreign influence of this nature. It harms all of us. It targets all of us. It should not be viewed as, the Chinese did this to help the liberals.
Right.
If the Communist Party of China is doing it, it's not to help anybody, right?
But
it's just to sow division and chaos. And this so-called leak is just continuing that.
Yeah.
Because look at where we are now. Look at the conversation we've been forced to have.
Well, hey, you're on the show, and we're asking whether or not we need to be worried about the Conservative Party of Canada. Right? That's not an everyday question.
Yeah.
We should, in a functioning democracy, we shouldn't be asking people, should we be worried about one of our main parties?
Well, it's human psychology, right? I mean, what people will do for the pursuit of power and to retain power. Don't underestimate what people will do for that. Whether they're political, religious, non-religious.
Yep.
Those are things which,
politics is everywhere.
Politics is the worst. I used to have a button in high school called it said nothing political is correct.
That's good. That's good. I like that.
I like that. Mubin, thank you so much for your time. I have one later question for you, because you gave us your bio, and it says at the end, Mubin is also featured in a permanent exhibit at the new International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C. under Preventing Terror. That is freaking cool. How did that happen?
Yeah, it is pretty cool. Like I thought to myself, I was like, oh crap, I'm in a museum. Like, does that mean like I gotta die soon or something? Or no, it was the new International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C. They had this smaller location, and then they moved to this like 5-story giant building at L'Enfant Plaza.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, very, very nice area there that overlooks the capital region and whatnot. So they just called me up one day, I think, and because I've been very active when the whole Toronto 18 case happened. I mean, that was just the one case that people knew me from, but not realizing that I was actually doing other cases for almost 2 years with CSIS before that. So the Toronto 18 just became public because it became a police investigation. So I remember going from CSIS to the RCMP intelligence to evidence. And then I had been doing a number of media hits. And then I think it was when the ISIS things kicked off in 2012, 2013. And I got right back into it. And I was just laying waste in ISIS social media channels. And they called me. They not ISIS, the Spy Museum, and they basically said, "Hey,
calling you, hey, could you knock that off?"
Yeah. Well, it's funny because ISIS was trying to track me like all the time, and luckily, I had a nice VPN, government strong VPN, But the Spy Museum reached out and they were like, basically, hey, we heard about you and we want to basically, in fact, what they said was, because there were some others who are featured in the Spy Museum as well, but I don't like them very much. They're just very anti-Muslim. That's their thing. And unfortunately, this happens. Some people who get fixated on the terrorism side of things, because you have all this, terrorism done in the name of Islam, unfortunately, people then conflate the terrorists with Islam. So
Right.
some of these guys, they're just nut jobs as far as I'm concerned.
Agreed.
And just became very, very negative. And so when they asked me, they said, oh, I said, well, thank you very much, but I will not be with those people. I would not put my name next to those people, and I don't want it. And so they said, no, you don't understand. We want to give you your own exhibit. And I was like, oh, well, okay. So yeah, they
in the same museum.
yeah, it was pretty cool. There's a glass case. It has my robe in it, so it's got a camouflage robe that I wore, this black scarf, some boots, and then it has a placard at the bottom. Mubin Shaikh wore these robes and these boots when he infiltrated the Toronto 18 for thesis, blah blah blah. I should have given some credit to the RCMP because but I didn't. I stuck with thesis. Well, it's nothing personal. It's just the investigation started with them, and they're the ones that are featured. It's a spy museum, and the RCMP are not spies. So
they're not spies. No.
But yeah, so it's on the 4th floor, 5th floor. But you know what? Sorry to kind of
no, go ahead, please.
Please. So when you get to the spy museum, there's like an auditorium you start off at, and Morgan Freeman starts to narrate the narration, and then you go through the museum, and then there are more theaters like that you can. So they've incorporated me into the whole experience. So you'll see me as soon as like in that first theater is when my face shows up and whatever. So it was funny because well, so I saw in there
with Morgan Freeman.
Well, it's funny because people have said, if you could have somebody narrate your obituary, who would it be?
Yeah.
And a lot of people choose Morgan Freeman. And so in the theater, like Morgan Freeman is speaking, and then after he speaks is when I come on. So I'm like, maybe that's a sign. Maybe he's going to be the one that's I'll get the. But it's pretty cool. It's a very cool museum. They just go through everything. I mean, it's I can't even describe it in words. It has, if you can imagine, just everything is there. Anything related to the spy world, it's there. And it's so cool. There's so many interesting gadgets. And I went again not too long ago because every time I go to DC, I gotta kind of drop by. It's funny because sometimes what I'll do is I'll go up, and we have this joke, like we'll go up and I'll kind of come near my exhibit, and they have the glass case, and they also have this big screen, like it's like a screen TV where an interview of mine is playing basically on repeat. And I'll just kind of come up close and then like just look to see, like somebody might look at me and I'm like, yo, that guy looks a lot like me. So just play around with some people. But it's a really cool place. You should definitely go and check it out. Saucy Seawitch, what's up? Definitely go and check it out. It's a lot of fun.
We have one here in Ottawa, but it's not open to the public. It's at CSE headquarters.
Yeah, I've been trying to get into that place.
I've done work at the old headquarters on Heron Road, Heron and Riverside. But the new one, since they built the new building, I've not been in there yet. I've had no work in there. But I did see part of the museum at the old one, and one of the floors they had a Cray computer. You know what a Cray supercomputer is? It looks like a piece of furniture, but it was like a supercomputer at the time for encryption, breaking. It was a code breaker is what it was. It was just some really cool. They had an Enigma machine there, like some of the ultra cool spy stuff that I know that they have at this museum in DC, but the public doesn't get to see it.
The Canadians have actually, I think, donated some stuff to that museum. So, yeah, this is the thing. Like, and I guess comes back to the larger discussion on how we even approach intelligence in Canada, right? Like our national attitude towards it is very different, obviously, than the Americans, and for good reason. But at the same time, we're like kind of an extreme on the other end. Like there's like no interest, there's no real discussion. There's no real, like, even how to have that discussion in the public, among politicians, among media. It's still a learning curve for some reason.
But we're really good at it, though. Like, we're really good at it.
We're really good at pretending it didn't happen.
Yes.
We don't talk about that.
Yeah, I guess that.
Well, like you said though earlier, it's the amount of people working on it. It's not that many. I have a very good friend of mine works in counterterrorism. His division is him. That's his entire department. He did have two other people working with him at one point in time, but they've been moved out and they're trying to get somebody to come in and assist him. But he's literally a one-man show. I can't tell you who or where, of course, but this is, there's not as many people working on these files as one would think. So what they do get done with the resources they have is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I just have a, if you're going to that museum every time you go to DC, when you start bringing the family, you're going to hit that point where you say, hey, let's go to that museum, and the kids are just going to roll their eyes.
Yeah.
No,
that's when you've made it.
They're real good. They're real nice. It's funny because a lot of the staff obviously know because they're all in different parts of the museum. So even when I do show up, it's just like, hey, you look familiar. You're that guy. So it's like, yeah, I am. They're like, oh, you're gonna go up and see your exhibit, and then it's just like, that's kind of weird. Like this guy just shows up to go and see himself. So, but I don't. For the record, I don't do that. I try to remain connected with the executive at the museum, and whenever they have events and stuff. And it's a way also for a Canadian representation, I think. And that's one of the big things because there's not much. And there's some Canadian stuff there, but not a lot. And I think in a way we do like that. We do kind of like to be low key and not really talk about it. And that's actually a big strength in this world.
Yes.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, people also got to know about stuff, and the way in which you kind of convey it and talk to people is important as well. So,
well, we keep our super secret societies pretty super secret. Like the amount of people that didn't even know that JTF existed for years.
Yeah.
After the division was formed, because at one point in time it was the RCMP that took care of that, and they're like, well, RCMP is not door kickers; they're enforcement. So let's create this new military organization to fight counterterrorism. And they were around for probably 10, 15 years before anybody outside of the military or or intel knew they existed.
Mm-hmm.
And they still don't get the headlines that like the Navy SEALs do, right?
Oh God, yeah, that's getting headlines is anathema in that world.
They don't want that. Exactly.
It's anathema. It's completely They have this whole thing about being silent professionals and not talking about stuff and just living real low key. Well, that's the way it's got to be done in that world. It has
and none of them look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? I don't know if you've seen the film Nobody. Nobody is he was a former spec ops guy, and he's just a regular looking suburban dad, but he's a butt kicker. And that's most of them. That's what they look like.
Yeah, I know quite a few JTF2 people, and there are a couple that look the part. Meaning, well, I don't know what the part looks like. That's your whole point. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're ogres, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But the rest of them are absolutely not, and you would never think, and that's the point.
Exactly.
That's the point. So,
Mubin, you've been very, very, very generous with your time.
Yes,
thank you so much for coming on the show and giving us the political and media literacy, the civics piece that we need to be able to understand this. And hopefully, if you're amenable, we'd like to have you on again because we, other than our regular show, we have a in-depth interview series where we like to get to know the person. Hopefully, sometime we'd have
I think we can do that.
Chat to you about different things. Right,
James, if you grow your beard like mine, you're not appropriating culture. You're just looking better now.
There you go. There you go.
All right, awesome.
You're just appropriating style, darling.
Style.
All right,
Who doesn't want to look like that man?
And by the way, the JTF2, they make fun of the SEALs. Mm-hmm. They were like, "Oh yeah, the Navy SEAls are." So, and our guys are better than the Navy SEAls anyway. So it's all good.
There you go.
It's true.
Oh yeah.
All right, folks. Thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you. So much. Take care. Eh?
Yeah. All the best to your family.
All right. Thank you.
What a nice
What
guy.
an awesome guy.
I like him.
Awesome guy. Oh yeah.
Because I've never spoken to him, of course, right? I mean, and we're not for this platform. In what universe would I ever have an opportunity to speak to Mubin Shaikh?
Well, and I
Seriously.
mean, see, I love him because he's such a
Down to earth.
intelligent individual, obviously, and an intellect, but he also is able to discuss really complex matters in a way that even I can understand.
Hmm.
Right?
No,
And I'm not,
sell yourself short.
I'm not the brightest bulb in the Christmas tree. I'm well aware of that, but I can understand when he brings it down to simple talking terms that most of us can understand,
Mm-hmm.
which
And
I think is
judging,
important because
right,
it needs to be done that way, right?
right, and judging by the comments from the kids who've been watching live, they appreciated it. So
Oh yes, yeah.
that's wonderful. Yeah, yeah. PJ, if you're speaking to him not as part of the show, you're probably up to no good. Yeah. Logic's unassailable there.
Yes, indeed.
Mr. Grizzly, before we end the show, because that was pretty good on its own.
I think
Um,
so.
yeah, we have a little bit of news about some Canadians who have done us proud.
Oh,
Yes.
do
Uh,
tell.
yes, we have our our skiers again are killing
Kicking
it.
butt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
killing it. At the men's Super G in Aspen, Colorado, we have a skier named Riley Seeger who took a 10th place, and Jack Crawford took an 11. Jeremy Reed 21st. So these are all top 10 finishes in top 30 finishes, I should say, in that race. So that is very, very good. And again, Jack Crawford picking up the points. And what I like about it is that it's everyone is getting in. Is
Oh yeah,
getting a
yeah.
top 10 this season, the whole team. In cross country skiing at the World Championships mass start for the men, we got a top 20 finish, top 30 finish, sorry, with Olivier Leveille, who finished 23rd in the mass start race, which is kind of a big deal. And then we have a top 8 finish at the single mixed relay in biathlon in the Czech Republic for the Canadian. No, that was mixed, so men and women together. That was really cool. We have Catherine Sebov, who we've talked about before, a tennis player who had won a tournament in Auckland and then qualified for the Australian Open. She just won a tournament in Toronto over the course of the weekend.
Oh, cool.
Yep. So she's
And
just
Bianca's back at the.
at Indian Wells.
Yes, I saw she because I follow her on Instagram, and she posted a photo at Indian Wells, and then she did a series of photos, and then there was one holding her the trophy, and she's like, back where it all began, and I'm kind of like, yeah, she'd been playing for a while, but that was her first major tournament that she won, that the whole
Right.
world kind of went, oh, hey, look at this, right?
Yep.
So for her, and in every respect, that is where it all began for her.
Right. Right. And then we have Jack Crawford again in a downhill at Aspen this time, took the silver.
Oh, nice. Way to go, Jack.
Yeah. Just, I know. Just,
you do know Jack.
Yes. And then we had 3 more Canadians finished in the top 30. Cameron Alexander at 22nd, Jeremy Reed again, Jeffrey Reed, sorry, again at 28th, and Brody Thompson at 30th. So yeah, lots of exactly as Kit Saucy, Canadians always kicking ass. Yes, absolutely. Yes. And the Sens won another match,
Yes.
so they are now within 3.
They are going to make the playoffs.
If they continue like this.
The last time they won on a win streak like this was 2017, where they went all the way to the conference finals in double overtime against the Pittsburgh Penguins and lost by a strange goal that bounced off of somebody and went in the net.
Yeah.
They were literally that close to the finals again, and that was in 2017. So it was a 10-year cycle at that point, from 2007 to the Stanley Cup Finals to 2017, that close to getting back in. Who knows? Who knows? I'm not predicting a Stanley Cup final, but I do believe they will make the playoffs. And once you're in, all you got to do is put a string of wins together, and Lord knows where you end up.
Well, that's exactly it, right? And if you're looking across the NHL right now, there are only 2 teams that have won their last 5 matches.
Ottawa's one of them.
And Boston is the other.
And then they're such a strong team, it's ridiculous.
Right? So, I mean, Ottawa's actually playing as the second best team or the best
Yeah.
right now. So go Sens, go Sens, go. Mr. Grizzly, do we have a show?
I believe we do. Yeah, we've exhausted, I think, everything we can this morning. Other than, oh wait, I have one more thing I wanted to post here.
Please do.
So this is from at E. Denhoff, Eric Denhoff, and he's talking about Alberta. No one brags about government trying to build cell phones through Novotel, which cost taxpayers $614 million. Or prop up pulp mills, which cost $325 million. Or support Gainers, which I don't even know what that is, which cost $209 million. Or the $440 million Swan Hills hazardous treatment plant. Or MagCan, whose abandoned magnesium smelter site I drive past every day on my way home, which cost the province $164 million. Alberta Tory fiascos. Tory, not NDP. Interesting. And he's right. He's not wrong.
No, not wrong at all. Not wrong at all. Well, kids, we hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show because, as always, we very much enjoyed making this for you. If you remember that sharing is caring, then you will use your word of mouth to tell people about us because word of mouth is priceless. And Kits, your word is worth its weight in gold. Here we go with our morning pour. The True North Daily Beaver Morning Show Morning Pour, brought to you by Don't Dine with Nazis.
Exactly.
Just saying. So yeah, let your peeps know about us, please. And if you see our shows on Twitter and all that, retweets equal love, and they get gratitude from us. Because democracy is something that you do, we're still going to stick on it. Write your MP, write your MPP, write your senator. Let them know that you do not like this shit.
We're not letting it go.
We're not letting it go.
We're not letting it go.
Let them know we still see them. We're watching you and we see you. If you really like this podcast, you can find us on Crier Media Network as well as all Beaver Grizzly friendly platforms. And if your platform is not Beaver Grizzly friendly, why not? Pressing questions. Stars and reviews are always appreciated, so please give some to us. If you're feeling particularly generous, we like the number 5, but we won't tell you what to do. We just hope that you will be very, very generous. Leave some reviews, leave some stars. It helps people find us. We love to hear from you. So if you reach us on our FaceTube page or our U-book.
Yeah.
I'm pulling your leg from Friday. I know.
I know. I'm okay.
Reach us on our Facebook page at True North Eager Beaver, our Twitter feed at True Eager, or by email at truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. You can subscribe to us via our pod page, and we will send something to you when we have something fresh off the bandwidth. That's podpage.com/the True North Eager Beaver, all lowercase letters with the hyphen between each one of those words. Podpage.com/the True North Eager Beaver. And if you are watching us on our YouTube channel, our True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube channel, that is, then subscribe. We've hit 170. That's pretty good. We're going on our way.
On our little subscribe button right there. It's the you can see our little logo. You can click on that.
Yes, we need your help to get to 1,000 so that we can start earning a couple pennies per show. So exactly. Any help that you can give us, we would really appreciate it.
Well, and you can also click on that up there. Right there.
Exactly, because we can't do this without your generous support. So if you feel that we've done a particularly good show today, or if you feel that Mubin's done a particularly good show today.
He did a particularly good show.
Kind of riding on his coattails here. Please scan the QR code on the top left of the screen to find our coffee/hot chocolate fund tip jar. And if you're listening, then let your fingers do the walking to coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word, lowercase letters. That's coffee, K-O-Heifer. K-O-hyphen-F-I. Well, you need milk for your coffee and hot chocolate. Coffee, Ko-fi.com.
Black like my shirt and my heart.
Eager Beaver, all in one word, lowercase letters, to make your donation. And finally, if you are a savvy shopper, because it is inflationary times and people like value for money in these times, well, then you can go to our merch store and you can donate to us that way and get something in exchange. Fashionable, trendy, stylish, True North Eager Beaver Media merch and Mr. Grizzly Civics tees are available for you so that you can put them on your gorgeous bodies and let everybody know what an engaged and informed citizen you are. Yes, because wearing our Eager Beaver merch has been shown to boost your Irish luck by 21.4%. And this is the period of time for Irish luck. Comes in handy
Yes,
around
it's
this time of
fast approaching. It is
insane.
11 days away.
Yes, and by Irish luck means like after you drink all your beer, you don't trip on a step and bust your face. You can
Like
go in
I
one
did,
piece.
like I did this time last year.
I tease because I love. From the Beaver Lodge, this is your Eager Beaver saying, until next time, dear kids, it can be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. Mr. Grizzly, do you have some words of wisdom for us before we go?
I do indeed. If you happen to live in a conservative riding, or even in a Liberal or NDP riding, please write your MP and let them know how pissed off you are at Skippy the Wonder Pigeon and his minions having dinner, or luncheon, I should say, with a far-right extremist. You can label her a Nazi if you want. I think it we're calling her that largely because character limitations on the Twitter, right? But she's a far right, anti-Islam, anti-woman, anti-immigrant. She is a woman, but she's anti-woman. She wants women to stay home and create babies. She's as much said that. I am paraphrasing. But write your MP, write your MPP for that matter, and let them know this is not acceptable that members of Parliament in 2023 are openly welcoming somebody like this into our country and breaking bread with them. It ain't right.
Nope.
And they need to be held to account, keep their feet to the fire. We're not letting this go.
Yep. And even, heck, at this point, even write the newspapers.
Yes.
The editorial section. It's like, yeah, it's going to fall on deaf ears and they probably won't care, but you know what? Let them know.
Let them know. Let them know you're not happy. Let them know you're pissed that this took place. They're the ones who are always screaming about dictators. Well, guess what? They invited one into our country.
And celebrated her.
Yes.
Rolled out the red carpet. Mr. Grizzly, please roll the credits.
I will do that in 2 seconds.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community and forum, and The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from fresh farm ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind.
Au revoir, les kitties. À bientôt.
Tonight at 9 p.m., ASMR for those of you who need a mental health chat. See you then.
See you then.
Bye.